Hello, hello, Soulful Seekers. Welcome back to Trauma and Transcendence. I have a different guest today than you are typically used to. Today, you're going to meet Evan Gatte, and he is from the Dale McCutcheon's Martial Arts School, and we're going to be exploring that from the trauma perspective on who and why you might want to explore martial arts in your trauma healing. You know that I'm very, very biased about this, but I do find that working from the top down and the bottom up is going to be the most important and somatic approach to your healing. But without ado, thank you, Evan, so much for being here today. It's nice to see you.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. So tell me a little bit about the school.
So I have been involved in the school since 2009. I've trained under my instructor for many, many years now. And then back in 2002 or 2022, I decided to purchase it and keep the legacy going.
Wow. What got you into martial arts to begin with?
Actually, at the time, a friend of mine was really involved in it, and it was a way for us to be able to do something together.
I love that. Did I see that you traveled internationally as well?
Yes, I did. Back in 2018, I traveled to Thailand and did a martial arts retreat out there. So it was kind of a eat, sleep, breathe martial arts for 2 months. In my downtime, I went into the town and I did Thai kickboxing as well. So it was all kinds of martial arts adventures there.
Wow, that had to be amazing. I myself have never been to Thailand. I've seen lots of beautiful photos and videos, but wow, how did that change your life?
So that was my introduction to a different way to do martial arts because ours is based in karate. Out there it was kung fu, and it was my introduction to meditation. And they did a slight introduction to things like Chinese medicine. So using meditation along the lines of the meridians to keep your body in tip-top shape.
Which explains why you've also crossed over into Reiki.
Yes, that's correct. And then when I came back, I wanted to keep pursuing that. And I found my Reiki instructor. I've been with her now for many years and went all the way through the stages of Reiki to keep moving with that.
So you touched on meditation, and I feel like that's a huge part of possible misconception for people with martial arts is those that don't know it. They think it's just the movement, kind of like the way that people look at yoga and they think it's, just physical postures and twisting into a pretzel. And we learned that that's just one branch of it. What can you tell me about the meditation aspect of karate and martial arts?
Well, martial arts in general, every movement that you do is done mindfully. So you can do meditation as you're doing martial arts in the same way that you can do meditation as you're pouring a cup of tea. So it's all about intentionality and where the focus is in any given time. When you're doing something like martial arts, you have to have the reason why you're doing it, whether that's to help with health and wellness. It could be because you want to defend yourself. It could be because it's just something else to do. So everybody's motivation for doing martial arts is going to be different, but that's where the intentionality comes into place.
Who are some of the people that you've had a chance to witness really benefiting from martial arts, and how did that go for them?
Yeah, so I've had a couple different situations where people have benefited over time. It might be something small like a super shy kid who comes out of their shell and starts to be able to make eye contact even. Sometimes that is a big deal for a student. Other times it could be somebody loses a bunch of weight because now their whole mindset is changing on what they should be doing. They have to be in the best shape for martial arts. So then that inspires them to make better health decisions as far as working out or the food that they consume or things of that nature. That somebody lose. I've had a couple people lose over 50 pounds just in the year or two that they had been there, and being able to see them on the other end of that and see that they are enjoying life a little bit better because of that, I think is so important.
Is it the quality of mind that they create, or is it the intentionality, the movement, or is it that they're just finally really in their bodies, being embodied, or a combination?
Yeah, I was going to say it's kind of. I think it's part of all of it together. When a student starts, they have very distracted ideas as to what martial arts is. You see a lot of movies in Hollywood where it's very much glamorized. You're seeing people do jump kicks and spin kicks and just crazy things. Sometimes even on the border of acrobatics. And then you get involved in it and realize that it is not as complex as Hollywood makes it look.
I'm a
You
hypnotist.
know,
They do me no favors either.
Right. Don't get me wrong. It's difficult, but in different ways. It's not because you have to spin and jump at the same time, but it's because of accuracy. It's because you have to be in full control of your body. And what you realize, at least in my opinion, what you realize is that the best teacher you will ever have is yourself. So if you are unable to understand yourself or be able to set with yourself, it's going to be very hard to teach yourself. And with all things, whether it's an energetic type of healing like Reiki, or if it's a very physical thing like throwing a kick, you have to be confident with who you are as a person in order to be able to receive information. And when people start a new sport or a new practice, I've used Reiki as an example, as well as something physical like karate, but it could be applied to something like dance or swim or anything. I feel like you have to have a certain level of open-mindedness to be able to do that. And if you aren't comfortable with who you are as a person, it's very hard to receive new information and then be able to apply it. And with martial arts teaching, I always say to a student, I can show you all that there is to know or to do in our specific system of martial arts. But it's up to you then to actually apply it and make the changes necessary. Because you may need to throw a punch 1,000 times before it becomes very effective. And I can give you the critiques and I can adjust, but you have to be the one to actually make those fixes.
I do a lot of coaching around resilience, and I can see why someone would have to, be open, but also it would take a lot of resilience, and you would build a lot of resilience through the process, that willingness to try something, possibly not be good at it, but be willing to suck at it enough to get better at it. I can see why that would be really, really helpful for that area, and how that can also branch out into other places in life, for sure.
Well, and resilience is such a, I guess in my opinion, is such an important role in living life because society tells you that if you fail, it's the worst possible case. You have to redo things, especially in school. If you fail, that's the end of the world there. You might have to repeat grades or whatever. And in something like martial arts, the goal is to actually learn to accept failure, because the only way you truly fail is if you quit or give up. And only through failure and only through making mistakes can you actually become better at whatever it is you're trying to cultivate and do. And I think the same goes with mindfulness practice, meditation, self-healing, all of these types of things. It's on a scale of really life. You have to be willing to make mistakes to find out who you are and to find out where you belong and what you're supposed to be doing.
For people like the audience here who've been through trauma and they carry a significant amount of fear in life, how can they begin to bring themselves to explore karate or martial arts so that they can have some of that resilience begin to grow and find some of that intentionality and clarity in life?
I have worked with individuals who have been through some very traumatic situations and very traumatic parts of their lives. The main thing that I see oftentimes is that an individual who's been through intense trauma first needs to forgive themselves. And it's not that anything that they did was incorrect or wrong. Oftentimes in traumatic situations, abusive situations, it's not that you could even see it. You have to almost live through it to find out why that situation might be negative. But many times people will hold on to the fact that they lived through something for so long, or that they experienced something for a period of time, or that trauma becomes their identity. And the first thing that you have to do is forgive yourself and realize that this is just a part of the learning and growing experience. This is a part of life. And as terrible as it is, you owe it to yourself to be able to work through that. And that may come in the form of giving yourself permission to do something to better yourself, whether it be a service through an individual such as yourself, or going through any type of healing. Maybe if it's talk therapy, maybe if it's energetic healing therapy. But as far as martial arts goes, I feel like there is the mind body connection through that type of training. And sometimes, well, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. The hardest part of a martial artist's experience tends to be the very first day, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what situations you're going to run into. So sometimes stepping out onto the floor, and what we do is bow onto the floor to show respect for what we're training. Sometimes that can be the most difficult and the most daunting of situations. And if you have a person who's gone through trauma, that can be your almost permission slip to embrace the training that you're going to go through. It's your permission slip to then bypass the restrictions that we sometimes put upon ourselves, whether directly or indirectly. Once you've gone through that, okay, I'm going to step out onto this floor. I've decided to cultivate a new lifestyle for myself. I look at that almost in the same sense where I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. You're walking from one room to another, and then as soon as you walk through that doorway, you forget what it was that you were going into that room for.
I did that this morning.
I feel like it may happen more often than we would like to admit. But when you walk through that doorway, it almost resets the brain. And in the same way, when you take an experience that is a bit larger than just walking through a doorway that you're comfortable with, but instead you're walking through this doorway of a brand new building, a brand new practice, an art, it will have that type of effect on an individual on maybe a deeper level, where you say, okay, this is who I was prior, but now this is who I can be now that I've given myself permission to grow and forgive myself.
I was going to say, isn't that just another doorway to a brand new life?
Exactly.
I can see just from my training and experience, the way that I work with NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, how just bowing is going to do so many things for someone who, one, isn't used to making that physical posture. So right then, what we're telling the brain to do is new experience, get ready, make new neurons. We need more neural pathways. We need a whole new program on how do I show up and be with this thing. And if the brain's creating a whole new program, then the body's going to follow suit. And so for those people that I work with who are stuck in a trauma response, maybe they're stuck in a freeze response. And so their muscles are slow, they're tired, they're not moving very much, or they might be in flight. They don't stop moving. They're in hypervigilance. And so those are the programs that they run all day, every day. But it sounds like when they get to your studio, they learn to bow. They have that first kind of introductory to here's where we're going to begin today. That has really great potential to start to break them out of some of the old conditioning that doesn't fit anymore. And then you work with someone like me alongside, and then what we do is have the whole package of healing happen. So it's not just from the body or just from the mind or the emotions, it's the whole thing. So that's actually really cool and exciting to see it from your perspective, and I fully get it a whole lot better now than I did before.
Well, and there's I still go through talk therapy myself because of certain things that I've experienced in my lifetime. And one thing that really stuck with me about my therapist that I'm with now is he talked about the idea of the tiger in the cage, and where a tiger is stuck in this small cage for many years, it finally gets into a healthy environment, but it still paces between the dimensions of what that original cage was. And oftentimes I feel we do that to ourselves, and myself included. And you're stuck within these same types of patterns over and over. And when you introduce something else, some exterior, especially movement, like you were talking about, you're starting with a bow, you start with the basic punches, blocks, and kicks. It's now expanding where your brain originally thought was the end of your path, or the end of the ability for you to move from one place to another. So it expands your overall mentality of where you can go.
I would even go further to say the nervous system and the somatic parts of the system, because as you're doing those things, you're not always going to have time and awareness to realize what you're even thinking about it or feeling about it, but your nervous system makes up its mind immediately, and then it sends responses for the body to full out respond. So there's a lot happening there in just those brief moments. How do people move forward from the fear is what I was trying to ask before, and I maybe didn't phrase it so eloquently. You went super deep, which was fun, but it was more of how do people come from a fright or a freeze or a shutdown state and even get up the courage to step out on that first floor and have that first class?
I think fear is something that everybody experiences. Those who have been through traumatic experiences probably experience it to a much more severe degree. But I feel like our brain operates very similarly to, say a metaphor of like a path in a forest. So if, recently is something I've done, and maybe some of your listeners may find this to be helpful for them as well. I found a spot in one of my local parks where I kind of flattened out the area, got rid of all the brush and stuff, and it's now my meditation spot. And what I realized through that was essentially this metaphoric idea of how our brain operates. The more you traverse this path, the deeper that gets. So the more I visit that specific spot, the clearer it becomes that I've been there before. If I were to not visit my meditation spot for a period of time, it's going to get overgrown and you're never going to even be able to tell that I was there. So oftentimes I think through trauma, it creates those pathways in our brain, and it gives us this idea that we have to revisit it to keep it fresh, to keep it open, to keep it traversed. When in reality, sometimes we just need to take a different path. Sometimes we just need to allow that part of our lives to move on, become overgrown. It doesn't mean that you weren't there before. It doesn't mean that you can't learn from that experience or where you were at that time. But sometimes it's time to let that part go. So it's time to let that path become overgrown and decide to create a new path. So
Are you sure you're not a hypnotist? Because you speak metaphor very, very well. We've got some suggestions going. I'm like, hey, wait a minute.
I'm not. I'm just a martial artist. But with starting martial arts, it's giving yourself again that permission slip to say, okay, that path doesn't need to be traversed anymore. We're going to take this path instead. And one of the best gifts I feel I can give somebody, in fact, one of the best gifts I have ever received myself, is positive association. It's having people around you who are willing to bring you up, to motivate you, to encourage you in the times that you do not want to do those things to yourself. To have somebody such as an instructor pour into you these ideals, these virtues, these skills, and to have that person sit there and say, no, you can do better, even when you feel like you're at rock bottom. I think that is one of the best gifts we can give to anybody. So for that specific situation, we have our programs, and self-defense program, for instance, is for those that don't want to learn the jump kicks of Hollywood. And, we don't want to do all those advanced craziness. You want to stick to something simplistic, like using your keys to defend yourself, or if somebody grabs your purse, how would you get out of that? And it's giving people permission to change trajectory, to change the course that they want to go on, to change that path for themselves. Success to me is not just a one-time decision. And this is where people who have been through rough situations, they have to come to this realization in their own time and when they're ready. Success is not just something we decide one time. You're going to wake up, I want to be a good martial artist. Okay. That's not something I can just decide. Every single day I wake up, I have to decide that this is something that I want to pursue and be good at. And every time I show up to class, every time I practice, every time I stretch, it has to be a decision that you continually make for yourself. So I feel it's the same sense for those who go through struggles. They have to wake up in the morning and say, I am not this situation. I am deciding to do better for myself, for my future, and for all of these other reasons. And you have to be able to wake up and choose to do something different. It's very easy to allow negativity, or what some say would be evil, to overcome our thought processes. The nature of how it works through us is it's very believable. If you have a low self-esteem already, it's very difficult to counter negative thoughts. And the thing is, the person that you are going to hear the most is going to be yourself. The person that you hear on repeat is yourself. I've asked kids, who's the number one person you have to hear? And they always say my mom. And it's like, yes, your mom might be right now. However, you are going to have to listen to your own internal thoughts from now until the rest of your life. And if you speak negativity into your own life, even if it is one time, the next time it'll be easier to believe it. And the next time it'll be easier to believe it. Same thing goes for positivity. If you just state one positive thing that you did for that day, then it may start changing how you are wired. Instead of sitting there and saying, this situation happened to me and it's negative and this is what I've become, you can change that. You can say, this is a situation that happened to me. Get more of a neutral stance on that situation and decide how it helped you to grow to become a better person. So, I heard something that in many cases I think can be true. I have a Christian belief. I believe in God and Christ. And, there may be some listeners who share the same thing. Either way, whatever it is that you believe, I feel like this fits within the standards of your belief system. Is one of the greatest gifts that God has given us is that there is no innate meaning behind what we are doing. A situation happens. God doesn't sit there and say, this is a good situation that just happened to you, or this is a bad situation that has happened to you. I feel that God loves us so much that he supports whatever it is that we decide to make it. If it is a negative situation and we perceive it as such, God loves us enough that he will support that within our own minds. When we go through struggle, when we go through trauma, oftentimes the initial feeling is quite negative. It can be detrimental to ourselves. It can be detrimental to our personal beliefs within ourselves. But I feel it is our job to then step back once we start to work through these types of things, step back and say, okay, this is a situation that happened to me. I'm going to pull the negative out of it. And what is it that I can learn now so that I can become a better person tomorrow? Or when you meet other people who have gone through the same thing, how is it that I can now help them?
Something I like to call that is post-traumatic growth.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah, I think it's true. I feel the same way. I don't necessarily label myself within any specific faith. I was raised Catholic. And there are some things that still resonate, that still fit within my life. And then there are other things that I just don't label because I've had a lot of experiences, and those primary personal experiences, they mean a lot to me. So they've definitely shifted my views. But when you say that God is neutral, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've got free will. And just because something happened and your nervous system or your brain or your emotions said, oh, this is a bad, awful, scary thing, it doesn't mean it has to stay that way. You can choose at any time to step into empowerment or embodiment and say, you know what, I'm willing to take this shit sandwich, for lack of a better term, and turn it around and help it be the fertilizer that makes me grow, right?
Right.
It's always that choice. Yeah.
Well, and one thing I've learned in martial arts too, this came much later, but I'm now training students that were born the same year I got my black belt, which is mind-boggling at times because, I guess I never thought I'd be in a situation like that. Here I am teaching somebody who was born the same year I got my black belt.
It sneaks up on us.
It does. I think about the struggles that I went through, the doubt or the fears or whatever it is that I experienced along my journey for martial arts. And I thought about it. I thought, what if I would have let that one? What if I would have quit? And now all these people that are, my students now, they wouldn't be there. And I've had people express to me that the school or the martial arts or whatever it is has been such a positive thing for them. And I look at it now and I tell people this now, is that if you allow the fear to win, you are not only doing a disservice to yourself, but all the people that you are going to potentially come into contact with in the future that need that service.
Absolutely. I really feel that strongly within my own experiences and career as well. There are people we're meant to be of service to. Who am I to hold back from helping them when we have some kind of soul level agreement that those things are, we're going to either be a catalyst for each other or we're going to be a support in some kind of way. So I think trauma can make us kind of self-focused in a way that is negative and small and keeps us small. And when we can remember, oh, this isn't just about me, then we have more choices. I will say one thing. I've been to the martial arts studio. I've been having private yoga with Jess, and a friend of mine has been just the best experience. And I really need to know, what is your secret? Because every time I enter there, I don't know what your beliefs are around this, but I have some mediumship ability. had some interesting experiences with that. I've tried to push it down. I've tried all the things, and now I'm just embracing that this is part of who I am. It is what it is, and that's partly why I went to Reiki. Actually, was okay.
Okay.
How do I manage this? I'm tired of running.
Mm-hmm.
Can't do that anymore. Um, every time I go to the Dale McCutcheon martial arts studio, the energy is pristine. For someone who's very empathic or even has mediumship, or if you're in those layers of trauma where you're feeling that fear, that oppression, going and being in this space is going to be a beautiful thing for you. And I can promise that if you are willing to do that and bring yourself to the room where martial arts happen, before you even bow, you're going to feel pretty safe, pretty secure, and pretty at home. How do you keep that energy so beautiful?
Well, I guess that's a good question because it's not necessarily something that I myself am just constantly doing. I feel like it's a community that I'm trying to build. So my instructor and myself always believe that that should be a family type atmosphere. Now, yes, there are certain rules in martial arts. You do need to be respectful and say yes sir, no sir, and yes ma'am, no ma'am, those types of things. But if I have a person who is doing martial arts, I also believe that we're kind of doing life together as well. If they have something that comes up in their life that may pertain to martial arts, or I may offer some insight to them, I want to do that. I want to be there for them in any way that I can. And the relationship between a teacher and a student is a very unique type of relationship because you do care about that person. You're pouring a part of yourself into the student when you give them that information. So you do have a, I don't know, subconscious belief that you want what's best for them. Aside from that, though, I know it may not be within traditional Christian beliefs. I don't think I fit within that. You mentioned what I, well, you mentioned
Just
what I,
being a Reiki practitioner,
I
you're
was
walking an
about to
edge
say
there.
that. Like I said, I believe in Christ. I believe in God. I was raised Catholic, and there is a lot of beauty in that faith and that religion. But I feel I'm more of a believer of these things, and I express them in different ways. My understanding of God, I think, has expanded beyond a guy in the sky because God is everything. It doesn't mean that he is just simply out there somewhere looking at us. I believe God is source, and that's an idea that's discussed in Reiki. Is God is source,
I
and
feel
that
so
means
are we. I don't know if you
yes.
feel that way, but I feel so are we. All of my experiences have, especially after Reiki, have always been we are the ocean in a drop, and then we get to
Hmm.
be that drop and eventually go back to the ocean.
Exactly. I feel like we are. Yes, we're unique individuals. Yes, we were created by God, but each of us express ourselves in such a way that we're a different expression of God. And it's our job to be the best that we can be, to express these positive traits the best that we can. And we don't always succeed. We make mistakes. But coming back now to intentionality, what is the intention behind what we're trying to do? And maybe that's where you're feeling the positive vibes at the school, is because my intention is always to try to be, how can I help this person who's walking through the door? I have some people that actually it's a funny parallel to life itself here. I've got some people who come in for a free week, is what we call it. They come in for 1 week, they try it, they decide it's not for them, and then they're gone. There's other people who then go to our 2 month course and they stick around 3 week, 2 month, they come in, and then some choose to leave after that. And then after that, they decide, okay, let's do a 1 year course. They may stick for 1 year. They may stick for 5 years. I have people who started back in 2020 when I was first running things, didn't own it, but ran it. And those people are still around now. So I have to look at each individual from kind of where they're coming from, and I have to come to terms with the fact that I may only have them for 3 classes and that's it. So, what is it that I can accomplish in those 3 classes to help them feel like they got value out of what we have to offer? Or how can I better them or their lives, their perspective, whatever it is, just in that short period of time?
That makes a lot of sense to me. And then also because you are seeing people for years, it makes sense that you have to show up neutral and
Mm-hmm.
make room for whatever growth they've cultivated that you might not yet know for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we can come at each other from that perspective, and it's more of a collaborative, how can we build each other versus what can I get out of you kind of situation, it does create that layer of energy that's different. I know you've got some exciting stuff coming up. One of them is the tea room. Do you want to
Yes.
expand on that?
my friend got me real involved in the traditions of Chinese tea, and we have a room here that we'll be remodeling to include this. There's many different ways that you can cultivate tea. This is why I mentioned meditating is tea at times too, because as you prepare your tea, it's not just put the tea bag in the water and that's it. I mean, there's a lot that can go into traditional brewing, such as cleaning the leaves, letting them open up before you actually make the tea, knowing what temperature to brew each type of tea at. So there's many things that go into that. And yeah, that's what we're trying to do there. And martial arts roots are in China. So I feel like having that connection to the traditional roots of where it came from can be a benefit. But we'll also be pairing with you here shortly as well.
And I will say, for those of us with trauma, tea, although it sounds like it's out of left field, it's really not. The experience of being present in every single moment is what you want the most of, to get the most out of your life, to reach your potential. Because when you're focused on those tea leaves opening up and the temperature of the water and having this whole little ritual take place, you're not focusing on the inner critic. You're not focusing on the emotional flashbacks or the night terrors that have taken place or the uncomfortable spots in the body. You're just present. So it's deeply impactful, and it makes a lot of sense that we're going to partner. And I'm so excited to partner because we work at things very differently, and yet we have a lot of the same outcomes.
Right, right. Well, and one of my ideas for the school had always been I want it to be a center for people to come and heal if they would like as well. Whether that's through yoga, we had yoga offered briefly for a little while back. If it's understanding the value of having tea and the benefits behind it. I made that the room that we'll be working out of. I originally made it for Reiki. And now I have individuals like yourself and Jess who want to pair and come into the school and offer what it is that you guys practice. And I think just creating that center of positivity to encourage somebody to be able to show up and be willing to improve no matter what it is. That mindset is what brings a lot of martial artists together. The idea that they want to step out onto the floor and better themselves, even if it's just one small thing, even if it's just developing a little bit more power in a punch or a little bit quicker in a kick or whatever it is. That mindset is what brings a school together. And I feel like when you work with, if you're working with healing, whether it's like I talked about talk therapy or trauma therapy or Reiki sessions or shamanic practices or whatever it is, an individual shows up for the same reason that somebody else would show up for martial arts. And it's just to try to better themselves in even the smallest way to help create value in their own lives.
Yeah. For those of us who are trying to create the feeling of safety in being embodied again, can you tell us a bit more on what the self-defense program looks like?
Yeah, so our self-defense program is it's a way that an individual can step into confidence within themselves. So we're teaching you how to defend yourselves. Sometimes in trauma situations, it had to do with an individual with ill intentions. And when you're able to step back and say, I know for a fact that if this type of situation were to happen again, I'm going to be able to get away safely. Sometimes that is the confidence, or like I talked about, the idea of a permission slip that you need to be able to move through that difficult mentality or that difficult situation. So we focus on the individual to develop the mental ability to throw punches, kicks, blocks, be able to defend yourselves against wrist grabs, hair grabs, clothing grabs, chokes. Even if you stick with it long enough, we'll even show you weapons defenses if somebody pulled a knife on you. And there's a mentality that is cultivated along the way that really does help to pair well with what it is that I feel you are trying to accomplish with an individual in the same situation. You talked about that we have to focus from the ground up and from the top down. And I feel that goes hand in hand, physical, mental, emotional. All three of those have to be on board for true growth to happen. So if an individual, starts to meditate, that's the mental part. Where's the emotion coming into play? Where is the physical coming into play? We add something like it could be simple exercise like going on a walk on a daily basis. That's the physical. Now, where's that emotional come into play? So we have to decide where everything is coming from and how, as a collective whole, as an individual, how can we give ourselves that permission to heal and to grow.
Yeah. In terms of logistics, how long do people usually work through the self-defense program?
It's funny that we're talking about this. The individuals that started in 2020 that I mentioned earlier are the ones that are still there to this day. So I remember, and it's crazy, I still remember the phone call that I had from them when they first started back in October of 2020. So they've been there almost 5 years now, and it's a husband, a wife, and then two kids. The two kids are in our traditional program, and the husband and the wife are in the self-defense program. So I think it's just one of those things that the longer you get into it, the more information that you get, the better you understand how to handle situations. The wife now is starting to get involved in weapons, so club attacks. But she's gone through a series of difficult training exercises to get to where she is now. She started with our basic punches, blocks, and kicks. She moved on from learning how to fall correctly if she was ever pushed. She's used her keys to defend herself in self-defense. And the way that situation I'm going to use as an example, she'll stand there in the center of a ring and we'll have two or three different guys go in or ladies, it doesn't matter, whatever they're comfortable with, and grab in basic things like a wrist grab, hair grab, clothing grab, choke. And she's using those car keys to defend herself. She knows how to hold them properly, what points on the body to strike to loosen up a person. That way, if a big dude does attack her, she can get away from it. So it's a journey. It is definitely a journey. We also don't believe in pushing people through a program. They go at their own pace. And I'm going to use the husband as an example right now. He's had a series of injuries outside and separate from the school that's caused him to kind of pull back and slow down. And the thing that I really like about it is that he's got this mentality that he's not going to quit. He's going to let these injuries heal, and then he's going to come back and just pick up where he left off. So it's kind of a cool program because you come in and you give it whatever it is that you want to put in. What you put in is what you get out. And if you are not ready to give it 110%, and right now your version is 50%, we'll meet you halfway. We'll work through that. As long as we're not getting caught up in the idea of having to get a belt or anything like that, I really don't care how long an individual takes to get through that material. My main concern is that if they were, say, attacked with a wrist grab, if somebody grabs their arm, I want them to get away from it. I don't care if they're a black belt or not. I want them to get out of that wrist grab. So I think that's maybe a mentality that we as a school have versus maybe branches of schools. Big branches may have the idea that you have to test every month or every 2 months. And they give you that time limit of, hey, within 4 years, we promise you'll be a black belt. Okay, but what value is there in that if we're not truly tested on the information and the knowledge?
One thing that you do that I really enjoy and I find has so much value is the way that you reach out to community. So I know you've got some really cool events coming up. I don't want to misname them. I want to say Ninja Night. What is that about?
So it is called Ninja Night. It's we use it as an opportunity to be able to get the kids in all together, for them to get to know each other. I feel that builds camaraderie, and it gives them an opportunity to bring in either family members or friends or whoever it is that aren't involved in martial arts. If nothing else, it just opens their eyes to what martial arts is. There are fun games and things like that, but for me, I always want to also teach the skills behind whatever it is. It's not just going to be, running around doing aimless things. But yes, that's coming up in October, and anybody can join, even if they're not currently enrolled in the school.
Is that a drop-in on the date kind of thing? Do they have to phone ahead?
It would be good to get an email or a call, I suppose. I've never had somebody just drop in. I'm not against it, but it is good for us to know so that we know how much, food to order and things of that nature.
Okay, so a little bit of appetizers or something happening. Are they come in costume because it's October, or I'm not
Yes.
sure if I understand everything.
Yeah, no, that's okay. We as a school will order pizza and things like that, and everybody just kind of brings a snack to share. We do have them wear costumes for this particular Ninja Night because it is Halloween themed, and we have a contest. And my office staff is super awesome. She prepares a goodie basket for the winner of the costume contest, and I know all the kids look forward to that. But they can also then, after the contest is over, go back to their regular clothes, whatever's comfortable.
I love that. But that's the thing that I really enjoy about what you do is you've got the outreach program, you're creating a safe space. It's a clean space
Mhm.
energetically and physically. It's a pleasure to be there. And then emotionally, it's a very safe, comfortable space to be. So, yeah, can't lose whether you're coming in to work with Evan and martial arts and self-defense or sending your kiddos to get some confidence, build some strength and be able to feel embodied. Or if you're choosing to come in and do some Reiki, you want to do some emotional healing, I'll be there with hypnotherapy and, of course, IEMT to reduce any flashbacks or traumas or responses that are still lingering that you've wanted to change. You just didn't know how. So you can come on over and be fully supported. The website, I know I'm going to get it wrong. Evan, what is it?
Com. Yeah, I mean, you can sign up for a free week there. We have the information about our instructors and our staff, school history, and much more on there.
Thank you so much for your time today and all of your insight. Is there anything left you want to share with the audience today?
If I had to leave on one note, I would say don't be afraid to try something new. If nothing changes, then nothing changes. As if something in your life is not exactly where you would like it, if it's an uncomfortable thing, if it's a thought pattern that keeps reoccurring, if it's a health thing that is just kind of setting around. If nothing changes, nothing changes. Do not be afraid to make some sort of change to allow that to move on.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for your time and your energy today. And hopefully, ladies and gents, you'll come and check this out because this one is actually local. And that's going to be very different. So you can find the studio in Uniontown. And somewhere within October, I will be available for in-person sessions. Very
Well,
much
thank you for
looking
having me.
forward. Thank you so much. And as always, Soulful Seekers, stay happy, stay healthy, but most of all, stay inspired. Bye for now.